Welcome, everyone. Hello, hello. I see a lot of people are saying are going into the chat and telling us where they're zooming in from. That's so fun to see. My name is Meryl Como, and I'm an independent artist and a member of the events committee of the Surface Design Association, which is a membership nonprofit focused on contemporary fiber and textile art. I'm also the founder and director of Gather, which is a fiber arts celebration in Greater Boston that will happen this spring. I'm delighted to welcome you to this week's Textile Talk, which is Learn and Make with SDA Part 2. Textile Talks webinars are brought to you by the International Quilt Museum, Quilt Alliance, Studio Art Quilt Associates, and the Surface Design Association. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping announcements. This is a webinar. Your screens and mics are not active or showing. We welcome your questions. We'll answer them at the end of all the artist presentations. Please submit them in the Q&A box, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We are honored to bring you these free and inspiring Textile Talks programming. We respectfully ask you to be courteous as you engage with speakers, moderators, and other participants. Your chat comments can be seen by everyone. So please use the Q&A for questions, the chat box for greeting others, and the survey for commentary or ways that we can improve. If you prefer not to see notifications from the chat, you can click the chat button on or off by toggling that button at the bottom of your screen. Today we present our second sneak peek at our Spring 2025 online workshop series, giving you a glimpse of the exciting individual practices of 4 of our 8 workshop instructors, as well as their plans for their workshops. So presenters include Lisa Klaulak on wet felting, Theda Sandiford on incorporating found and upcycled materials into textiles, Maggie Hensel-Brown on lace making, and Youngmin Lee on bojagi. In last month's Textile Talk, we profiled Janine Shirios on knotless netting, Erin Fletcher on bookbinding, and Radha Pandy on papermaking and encaustics, and Robin L. Bernstein on yarn painting. And that talk is now available as a recording. For those of you who are interested, the workshop formats of SDA's workshop format spans a Saturday to a Saturday with 2 hours of instruction sessions on each of the weekends, and midweek, a meetup to troubleshoot, share progress, and gather in community with other participants. Instructors will be present during the workshops, and that makes it a great way for you to get to know your instructor and also your fellow participants. All workshop recordings will be available to participants for revisiting until the end of 2025. Registration is limited, sessions are small, and the series runs over the course of 2 months, which makes it possible to register for several workshops. More details are available on the SDA website. All right, let's start with our presenters. So our first presenter today is Lisa Klaulak. Lisa is an artist, wordsmith, and educator living in Asheville, North Carolina, exploring making and teaching under the guise of strong felt. Lisa's work has been recognized through American Craft Council and James Renwick Alliance Awards, and publications such as Fiber Arts, Surface Design Journal, Shuttle, Spindle, Die Pot, Fiber Art Now, American Craft, and several international felt journals. With a reputation for technical precision and its opposite, wanderlust, her career and aesthetic have been marked by worldwide travel, conducting workshops in over a dozen countries. Having completed a master's degree in sculpture in spring 2020, Lisa's recent work dials in on the correlation of concepts of space and material, social environments, and the psyche. Welcome, Lisa. Let's start your presentation.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here today. Lisa Klaulak, and I'm coming to you from Asheville, North Carolina. And as I think you can see in the video, there's some sunshine today. That's a welcome weather pattern after the storms that have kind of devastated our area. Um, I am thrilled to be here today, reaching outside of this area to connect with all of you and the other extraordinary artists that are participating in this textile talk. Thank you, Meryl, for the introduction, and also to the hosts, the supporters of this textile talk, and Surface Design Association for inviting me to participate in the 2025 workshop series. I want to speak a little bit about my practice first. And though these are very kind of disparate looking objects, there is a lot of commonality in the connection to the material. So as a craft artist, my work is inextricably linked to the origin of the material I use. It's attributes and qualities as well as the processes that I use to transform it. I'm kind of going to work from the left image to the right, and with being a felt maker for almost a quarter century, the origin of my material is hair, and it is that small incremental growth of cells into a long singular thread that's fascinating to me, that accretion into a larger mass or form. And also the connection to that hair, that hair being connected to the layers of that mammal, and the attributes of protection that hair carries, as well as the reactivity of that hair when a mammal is, feeling threatened, for instance, and how its nervous system reacts. So I think a lot about layering in my processes, kind of thinking through different substrates, different densities of felt when I'm laying out, different fabrics. You could see in that necklace on the far left of the screen, I've embedded objects. These are glass pieces. So I'm thinking a lot about density in the work I make, and kind of the idea of geology is very inspiring to me in that stratification. I think about what areas of my layout have the most movement and shrinkage and which don't, and how that affects texturing and also concavity and convexity of the surface. Another attribute of or quality of hair, of wool in particular, is that scale-like structure that's on it that is the reason why it mats. And I think a lot about those kind of scales on the surface of the fiber as almost like limbs that kind of reaching out and grabbing onto each other and coming together. So there's a lot of analogies to connection in the work I make. You can see I'm incorporating these domestic objects of the clothespins. I think a lot about social structures in the same way of geology and stratification, and how fibers can move between those layers, and the connectivity of social groups, including our family. So this piece in the center is called fracturing. We think a lot about that connection, especially as we age, connecting to our family, then the bigger community, et cetera. But we also have that kind of fracturing that happens from within a community. And so I was thinking about that a lot with these clothespins, and how to create pattern, and also the easy release, or if you will, erosion of that connectivity. And the piece on the right is a vessel. It is inspired by old Crocs that I recently inherited from my family's original farmstead in Michigan. And I got huge Crocs, like 40-gallon Crocs. But I didn't want to make a piece of felt that large. So I was exploring the idea of felt and fiber as how it holds, not just in a vessel situation here, but I think most people understand that wool really absorbs moisture and holds far more than its weight. And I think a lot about that kind of weight of connection to my settler history, in Michigan. And so when I got these in my own possession, they were in the family and I knew they were there for a long time. But when I actually got them in my home and was thinking about the clay and where it had sat on the ground, and how I am the fourth generation born in the States, um, I kind of decided to make a body of work about that. And I chose these three particular pieces as an example of my work here because they're all very much tied to different attributes of the felt, but they're also very dependent on my control of the felt. And that is a big part of the workshop I'm going to be offering. Next slide, please. So the workshop I'm going to be teaching this spring is it's a tangent from the online courses that I actually have been teaching for the last 4 years post COVID, or after the COVID shutdown, when I moved a lot of my teaching online and really was thinking about how to, again, in a stratified way, teach base information and build on that so that participants in my classes could continue to kind of tier up and learn and involve multiple dimensions and materials in their felt work. So this is one of the videos from my first course called Foundational Structure. And you can see on the left, we're going to be starting with a specific area of layout, which is that brown paper fabric, that brown paper that you see in the background. And we're going to be laying out very different weights of wool and talking about the qualities of the wool, why what happens, but also keeping controls on everything except for the way to lay out and really getting dialed in on how to control the shrinkage and the edges so that we can make a really specific assessment of how much a certain weight of wool in an area shrinks. And we're also going to speak to the different phases, if you will, of that shrinkage. You can see in the center piece that transition of gradiated black squares. And you can see the top one is much more porous, and that is more in the layout structure before the fibers have integrated and locked together and got denser. So what you're looking at the very bottom square is 90% shrinkage that has occurred because of the weight, that thin way to lay out. The next square above that is 75% shrinkage. The next one above that is 60, and the one above that is 45. So we're going to talk about using different weights of wool, but also where to stop in that process for different applications and effects. And then in the follow-up session, the second class that's going to meet on April 12th, we're going to talk a little bit more about combining different weights of wool. You can see on the right, the black layout is a much thinner layout than the white. And therefore, on every one of those stratificated layers, you're going to see the black is a much smaller area than the white because the white was laid out 8 times heavier. But you'll also notice there's a transition of form, and that is completely based on my direction of agitation. So we're going to learn how to control this material because, as you saw in my pictures before, in order to make a necklace fit and lay where I want it on a body and have the clasps work, in order to shrink down skin tight on a clothespin so that the skin fits the form, and in that last piece to be able to make something so that is recognizable to its original form or to my idea, it is necessary to have a sense of control over the shrinkage, which is a relationship of mass and weight of area. So I'm super excited to offer this course through Surface Design to give you an introduction to my teaching and my online teaching course. And you can find more information about the online class at strongfelt.com/online courses. And also, if you're more interested in learning about Strong Felt, there's a lot of information on my website, as well as a mailing list you can sign up for to learn about upcoming events and workshops. So thank you so much for bringing me here today, and I hope we enjoy the rest of the session. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Our second presenter is Theda Sandiford, and Theda is a highly regarded artist known for her unique approach to fiber and installation art, drawing inspiration from the profound impact of racial trauma. She skillfully combines various fibers and found materials using techniques such as weaving, coiling, and knotting. The materials she meticulously gathers, along with contribution from the community, serve as a representation of collective memory, forming what she terms social fabric. This fusion of contemporary issues with personal narratives results in a vibrant tapestry of interconnected stories. So, welcome, Theda, and glad to have you here. Let's begin your presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the welcoming introduction, Meryl. I'm Theda. I am deeply immersed in the language of materials, drawn to textures, origins, and the transformation of the elements that I work with. My art reflects heritage and resilience, where I blend cultural history with the natural and industrial world, creating pieces that are vessels for storytelling. I strive to balance tradition and innovation, fusing my identity and the experiences of everyone I interact with into every piece I create. My practice is rooted in reclaiming and reshaping, whether it's marine debris collected after hurricanes, fibers harvested from plants like yucca, or discarded objects with hidden histories. These materials become sacred vessels, bearing witness to stories of survival, memory, and belonging. Each piece I create is layered with meaning, pulling from the past to speak to our present and future. Working with found and upcycled materials isn't just an approach. It's a philosophy of honoring of what has been cast aside, transforming waste like the orange and green ink cartridges on your screen on your left into wonder. Living in the rainforest of St. Croix, I am constantly inspired by the landscape, its abundance and decay, the textures of bark, leaves, seeds, vines, and flowers, the rhythms of the ocean waves, and the flash floods that seem to be happening a lot lately, to the chorus of frogs, birds, and insects just outside my studio window, right over there. These elements all shape my work, influencing the way I think about art and its materiality. The fibers, shells, and organic textures I gather have life and lineage. They aren't just raw materials, but they're carriers of spirit, deeply entwined with the land, sea, and cultural memory. And then there's the things I find around my home: bottle caps, Amazon packaging, stained t-shirts, torn sheets, broken necklaces, and orphaned earrings, even my failed art experiments. To me, these are not cast-offs. They're raw materials with untapped potential. On the right screen, you'll see that I have transformed bottle caps into braided ropes threaded with neon paracord to mimic the beauty of bird of paradise and the invasive vines climbing in the tree canopy here in the rainforest. Beyond my personal practice, I'm a mentor, wellness advocate, foodways folklorist, and creative strategist, helping others find their creative voice and recognizing the artistic potential in everyday things, especially in resources others might overlook. Through workshops like Textile Alchemy and my ongoing projects, I encourage others to cultivate a relationship with materials that goes beyond surface aesthetics, engaging with textures and histories that each object holds. My journey from Jersey City's urban landscape to the lush Virgin Islands reflects my evolving relationship with materiality itself, a dialogue between place, heritage, and the deeply tactile process of creation. I'm passionate about helping others see art as a way of connecting with the past, honoring the beauty and overlooked materials, and creating with purpose, rooted in the stories carried by the fibers, textures, and the objects we gather. So we can go to the next slide. Imagine being able to look at any environment, a beach, a city street, or even your own closet, and see endless creative possibilities. Textile alchemy is more than just a workshop. It's an invitation to reimagine what's possible with materials that might otherwise be discarded. Through this experience, you'll learn to transform objects into meaningful art, exploring texture, color, and forms you may have never considered before. On the left, you see a pile of marine debris after it's been cleaned and sorted, Once processed, these materials are ready for transformation, as seen on the right. Together, we'll explore questions like, what unexpected textures, patterns, or colors do you notice when you look at these objects differently? How does a material's origin influence the narrative of your artwork? Does the environment where you source your materials impact the way you see or use them? What makes material valuable or waste? And how can we rethink these terms in our practice? How can you adapt to the challenges of working with unconventional materials? We will tap into creative discovery and learn to see potential in everyday items. You will walk away with a new understanding of how to repurpose materials and embrace zero waste practices. You will connect with other participants who share a passion for creativity and sustainability, exchange ideas, and expand your network. You will learn to be resourceful and sharpen your creative instincts and innovative thinking by working with what you have. And you will learn practical skills and techniques for working with found and upcycled materials. We will discuss material preparation, textile techniques such as fabric manipulation, cordage making, patching, and dyeing. We will delve into structural techniques such as weaving, knotting, layering, and sculpting with found objects. We will explore a variety of attachment methods like binding, wrapping, hand stitching, and discuss the pros and cons of various adhesives and fasteners. We'll spend some time problem solving and improvising tools and learning how to adapt to the limitations of our materials. And we will also discuss presentation and finishing of the work, how to mount and display in ways that showcase the material's unique qualities. Textile alchemy is a space for experimenting with new techniques, where you'll be encouraged to let go of traditional expectations and lean into innovation. It's a unique chance to develop a new relationship with materials where sustainability, imagination, and personal expression intersect. No experience is necessary, just a curiosity to explore and a willingness to play and try something new. Textile alchemy will change the way you see the world around you. Join us and let's turn waste into wonder together. Thank you.
Thank you, Theda. Our next presenter is Maggie Hensel-Brown. Maggie lives in Australia and is unable to make it to our live webinar today due to the time difference, but we have a recording of her presentation. So let's watch her presentation together.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. So yeah, my practice is, it's all about taking needle lace, taking the sort of the long entrenched traditions of needle lace and basically creating little contemporary self-portraits or sort of images of modern life using needle lace. So there's quite a long, incredible history of storytelling that comes with lace making. You know, you can go right back through the centuries and see these really incredible pieces of historical needle lace that tell really interesting stories and using this balance of positive and negative space, and you know, subtle color changes and clashing patterns. You can create these really beautiful kind of readable images, and that has been something that's been inspiring me for yeah, the best part of 10 years now. I started making lace in 2015, and I've really always been someone who really gravitates towards fine detail, like anything that I can make smaller and more intense and more layered and tinier, really as tiny as possible. It's always been something that I've gravitated to. Even as a child, I used to really love, you know, I would learn how to make something in origami, and then I would tear my little origami sheet into 4 pieces and make something about the quarter of the size, and then I'd tear that quarter into another 4 pieces, and I'd make something a 16th of the original size, and then make things sort of smaller and smaller. And you know, I guess it's a semi-obsessive streak that that I've learned to work with in my practice. But needle lace is like, it's the pinnacle of that for me, because it's essentially most of the things that you're going to make out of needle lace are all based on this one stitch. It's up to you how much detail you want to add. You know, it is this sort of there's so much capacity for playing with imagery and playing with adding and taking away detail. And yeah, I have found it a really inspiring medium. So yeah, like I said, I started making lace in 2015 at the Australian Lace Makers Guild. And since then, I just have been, it blew my mind. I never wanted to go back to really any other medium. It's not only does it have this, you know, the joy of the creation of the work and of the designing of the pieces, it also has this incredible history that you can tap into, and this long history of, you know, groups of women sitting together and stitching and telling stories and using this sort of essentially one stitch that is morphed across continents and across time, and it feels really special, I think, to be a part of that, you know, one of the links in that chain. And I feel really honored to be able to teach it regularly, and to know that, you know, one of my contributions to the lace making world is to, like you said before, is to grow the profile of needle made laces specifically, and to get more people, the skills into as many hands as possible. Yeah, so a lot of my pieces are about really contemporizing the sort of traditional works. So in terms of imagery, I will use often scenes from my own life. I like to, in this medium that is really sort of incredibly detailed and beautiful, I quite like the sort of juxtaposition between that medium, the beauty of the medium, and the sort of ordinariness of everyday life. So a lot of my, the things that inspire me are things like just mundane stuff from life. It feels like there's something really special about taking a you know, just a snapshot of something that is discarded or overlooked or just sort of ordinary, and spending all of this time and care and love and attention and turning it into something as ornate as a piece of needle lace made out of silk and beads and all of those things, and dedicating all of that time. It's become a really interesting kind of way of viewing my own life, I think, you know, seeing something a bit trashy, a bit, you know, boring, ordinary, mundane, and then kind of being able to switch that and to see it through the lens of a piece of needle lace. It's made me feel like the mundane moments of my own life have become quite special in a particular way. And so, yeah, as I said before, there are there's a sort of choice of how much detail you want to add. I obviously am a sucker for detail. So in my own work, I want to add as much as possible, and to kind of to make things as intense as I possibly can. But within the practice of making a piece of needle lace, you do get to choose how much to add. So I want to say this up the front, just not to scare anyone away. You don't have to make something, you know, you don't have to make something so ornate that it's going to take you 6 months. We're going to start on something quite straightforward. So if we could put the next slide up, please. So this little underwear sampler, this little knickers sampler, is going to be what we work through for the course. And the idea is that just using the sampler, you're going to end up, you'll have all of the skills. You can again choose to cut it back on detail. I'm going to show as many of those stitches as possible, but it is up to you how much to kind of go into it. So, but you know, I always encourage an insane amount of detail if you feel up for it. That's completely, it's completely encouraged in my classes. So you'll learn just using this tiny little sampler. There's essentially 3 processes that that you use to make an entire piece of needle lace. So the first is laying a coordinate. So that kind of gives you a bit of a scaffolding to work on. The second is ground stitches. So in those ground stitches, that's going to be just the stuff that kind of fills up the coordinate. So that's the fabric of the piece essentially. And then you're going to do borders, so borders and kind of filigree details. So the way the class will break down is in the first session we're going to do coordinate and ground stitches, and in the second session we're going to do some borders and some details and things like that. And again, you can see the sort of difference between those 2 pieces on either side. You can see how much scope there is for creativity and sort of changing things around. So it should be, I love teaching this class, particularly I love teaching this little knickers sampler. I feel like it really strikes a chord. And yeah, it is quite an exciting little way to delve into needle lace, and it'll be a nice way to either learn the skills for the first time or to kind of brush up on your skills. If you have done a little bit of needle lace before, it's always interesting to kind of, you know, learn someone else's way of doing things, and yeah, and just kind of try something a little bit new. So I'm really looking forward to working with you all, and yeah, I'll send out lots of handouts, PDFs, and hopefully we'll all make something really beautiful together.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about Maggie because I didn't get a chance before. Maggie, you know, considers herself a multidisciplinary artist, and as she's talked about, she is contemporizing these traditional lace techniques. She wasn't tooting her own horn there, so I'm going to toot it for her and just say, you know, she's worked with the Australian lace makers and more over the last 10 years, studying, teaching, and building the profile of this particular way of making lace, this needle-made laces. She has training in reticula. She has training in Ponto in Aria. She has training in Emilia R, and also Venetian Grow Point. So you're seeing a variety of methods here that she will be able to teach you. And she draws in those works, she draws on all of those methods combined together. So as she said, she's telling stories. She does draw on the stories of her own life, and she uses thousands of these tiny stitches to tell her stories of contemporary moments of frustration and boredom and bliss. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there. And thank you, Maggie, for that video. Next, we're going to our final presenter is Youngmin Lee. And Youngmin Lee is a textile artist using the bojagi tradition and techniques to create her work. Her interest in textiles led her to study clothing and textile in college, and she received an MFA in fashion design in South Korea. She actively works on preserving the bojagi tradition that embodies the philosophy of recycling and upcycling, as the works are made from pieces of fabric left over from other projects. She is working closely with the Asian American community, and with the wider community, she's engaged in projects and workshops. Youngmin's works have been exhibited and collected internationally, and her new book, Bojagi, The Art of Korean Textiles with Techniques and Project, I heard has just been published this year. It's available now. There is going to be a link in the chat. So welcome, Youngmin Lee, and we are happy to have you today.
Thank you, Mariel, for wonderful introduction. And before I start my talk, I'd love to take all the classes that all the presenters offered today and the previous video. It's wonderful. And now here's my offering. Hello, everybody. Greetings from Seoul, Korea. It's early morning here, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the SDA workshop series. When I teach my workshop in May 2025, I will be back home in California, and I cannot wait to share the unique experience with you. Bojagi, traditional Korean wrapping cloths, have a deep cultural significance. They were historically used to wrap, cover, carry, or store objects in daily life, as well as during special occasions and religious rituals. Beyond their practical purpose, bojagi are believed to capture bok, meaning good fortune or happiness. The process of creating bojagi is imbued with love and good wishes, carrying the maker's affectionate energy and good intentions for the recipient's well-being. Bojagi is an umbrella term for wrapping cloth. Most have a square or a rectangular shape. One bojagi can have many names based on the user or maker's class, its intended use, size, materials, techniques, designs, and embellishments used. These are some names of different bojagi. For example, Mimbo is bojagi made and used by commoners just like me. And Papsangpo is covering bojagi used to cover dining tables or food containers, symbolizing cleanliness and care. Checkbo is a bojagi to wrap and protect and carrying books. Moshippo is bojagi that is made with moshi, which is reimi, the material fabric. Yeoijumunbo is adorned with yeoijumun. In Western culture, people call it cathedral window pattern. And this bojagi is symbolizing wishes and good fortune and prosperity. Subo, embroidered bojagi, is decorated with intricate embroidery. Girogibo, goose wrapping bojagi for the wedding day, was used during traditional ceremonies like weddings to wrap geese, which is a symbolic item that represent fidelity and lifelong commitment. Jogakbo, patchwork bojagi, made by piecing together various fabric scraps. It is not only practical, but also an art form, in my opinion, representing creativity and resourcefulness and sustainability. So the suffix bo indicates bojagi when you hear the name. Jogakbo or patchwork bojagi represents the philosophy of recycling, as these clothes are crafted from remnants of leftover fabric. The word jogak translates to small piece in Korean. There are many types of jogakbo, each defined by materials used, size, construction method, and design. A single layer bojagi is admired for its transparent quality, which highlights the intricate seam techniques such as samsol, tongsol, and gopsol. These are techniques create the beautiful crafted seams that define its delicate structure. In my work, I sometimes combine multiple finished layers to create depth and shadow, adding complexity to the design. The interplay of seams and layers transforms the bojagi into multifaceted piece, showcasing its dynamic beauty and versatility. This is one of the ways that I incorporate the ancient stitching tradition into my creative practice. During the workshop, we will explore the rich tradition and history of bojagi, focusing on their cultural importance and timeless beauty. I will introduce you different types of bojagakbo, their names, and their unique characteristics. We will also discuss Korean traditional stitching and seam techniques with sample works for the future reference. Next slide, please. Additionally, I'll share insights into bojagi making materials, and I will encourage you to incorporate fabrics from your own stash. Together, we will practice basic jogakbo construction through an intuitive and improvisational design process. Usually, I do not make any plan when I make my own bojagi, so I want to share this with participants. This approach allows you to make your own creative decisions, fostering a deeply personal and satisfying experience. Hand stitching is at the heart of bojagi construction, and it can be wonderfully relaxing. During the workshop, I will emphasize finding your own rhythm in stitching rather than focusing solely on perfecting each stitch. As you create your bojagi, I invite you to wish for happiness and well-being of both its future recipient and yourself. Personally, I find immense joy and fulfillment in my creative process. And it is this joy that I hope to share with you during the workshop. I look forward to introducing you to the beautiful world of bojagi and guiding you through this enjoyable and meaningful craft. Wishing you happiness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Youngmin Lee. Stay on, and if everyone else would come back, it looks like we have a little bit of time that we can connect, which is great. We one of the things, I'll stick with you for a minute, Youngmin Lee. One of the things that I see about all of you, but I'm going to have Youngmin Lee tell us a story, is the visual language and the meaning behind and what's being communicated by your work. All of you, including Maggie, really have stories that are being told of some sort. But Youngmin, I really enjoyed a story that you told on another program that I think could really be a model for our society as a whole. So I'm wondering if you would share with us your story of the 7 friends.
Oh, yes, I'd love to share the story about my 7 friends. So when I introduce my sewing tools, I often refer to them too as a 7 personified sewing friends from old Korean story. So these 7 friends are a ruler, a pair of scissors, a needle, thread, a thimble, and a small iron with a long handle, which is called indu in Korean, and a flat iron. So these 7 friends were arguing about who helps the lady the most and who is the best friend of the lady. And they all insisted I'm the best friend of my lady because they all had reasons. So, for example, the ruler is saying, without me, how can you measure and know it is if it's too long or too short? and scissors is insisting I can cut precisely. And the needle says, how can you make knit stitches without me? And thread is saying, oh, without me, you cannot do anything. And thimble lady is saying, I will help my lady's finger getting tired. So they all have things to say. And the small iron is saying, oh, I can make the small corner nice and neat. And the flat iron is saying, I can remove all the wrinkles that you made, all 6 of you made. And then after that story, at the end of the story, the, all these 7 friends realize that they need to help each other and to collaborate to help ladies sewing work. So I think it's fun to talk about what each tools can work, and it also tells you have to cooperate and
Mhm,
collaborate to
mhm.
get the best results.
Yes, I
And
love that story.
yeah, and I often say I add a couple more friends that I recently made, which is rotary cutter and Hera markers, that things that we can take advantage of a little bit of technology or the contemporary materials.
Yes,
Yeah,
and we have to be in, in concert with our tools. We have to be in a cooperative relationship.
right.
You
Right.
are also someone who I think anthropomorphizes some of the physical things that you make, sort of represent characteristics of human life. Was particularly intrigued with sort of the idea of strength and vulnerability, that you see both in your work. And I wonder, can you talk about it? A story of your life in some way that sort of brought you into this idea of this duality.
I see. So I always think I'm living in between.
Or just young men, just a minute. I think Lisa's going to answer this one first, please. Thank you.
Um, I think for me, when I first started working with wool fibers, I was aware that just the density and the thickness that a lot of people work with, and of course the density of your layout is going to create a stiffness in your felt, and it doesn't make for so much flexibility. And so it depended on what I was making, how I would want to how much wool I would want to lay out. And in particular, that became the most, I guess, apparent in my world, in my life, and in my making, when I got in a car accident, and I realized, that the flexibility of our tissue in our body is the best. It is such a resource in terms of the impacts of life, and just that idea of being able to mend and shift and change, or I'm sorry, be malleable and mend, and shift and change based on what life delivers to you. And I took that idea at that time and made myself a really long, probably one of the longest hollow form pieces I'd ever made, playing with really dense pieces of felt and really thin layouts, so that the thinnest areas shrank the most and became like the tissue of the spine, and the thicker areas protruded. And you can see that on my website. There's a piece called Foundation, and it's also plays with that idea of having a tough skin, and that's supposed to be strength, but really the strength comes in your ability to move and change with the things around you.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Theda, you also you are telling stories through your work, and I imagine that it's I see you really as a role model for people being able to speak out on things, and so I'm wondering if you do talk about things that are weighty, I would say, and you incorporate trauma in your work. And I was just wondering if when you do manifest this experience into your pieces, does it ever transfer to the pieces and provide you with some relief?
Well, that's the whole purpose of doing it for me. So, whether it's, waste or a microaggression or some sort of social injustice, it all has weight that I can feel in my body. And so, in working with my hands and working with the materials, I am literally putting that into the finished product. And it's this thing that's over here now, it's away from me. And the trauma leaves my body, goes into these materials. And so, while it may look beautiful to someone else, to me, I see all the pain that is now over there, and I'm free of it. So no matter what would be happening, I would be compelled to do this because I need to get rid of it, because holding these things in your body is incredibly unhealthy. And it destroys yourself and your relationships with other people. And I just see, I want better for myself and the world.
Mm, I agree. So Youngmin, your work there is a language that's embedded, that's historic, right? That's traditional. And do you
Yeah.
feel that in your work, are you really thinking particular message? You're trying to say particular messages, and I wonder, do you find that your students are able to manage the language and also do you encourage them to tell their stories through their work?
Oh, yes. When I make or teach my bojagi work, I often say each hand stitching is the way that you can put your good intentions and good wishes into your piece. So that good intention will be imbued on your work, and eventually it will come back to you, and you will feel that positive energy that you put and or pour. So I think the positive and good intentions are going around and coming back to you. So yeah, so that's the message that I want to emphasize when I make my work, and help people to think about that, because that was the traditional way that Korean mothers try to put good wishes for their children, especially for their daughters, and
Hmm.
they can keep that mother's love and energy within
Yeah,
when they were using the pieces.
yeah,
So my simple message is wishing for happiness, because
yeah.
it goes around and eventually it will come back to you.
Right. And
Yeah.
everyone here uses processes. You all have incredible mastery with your techniques, and you're all using these processes which cause a human being to stop and think and focus on a body experience, a very concentrated body experience, which then comes outward, with an expression, which is really fun to see. We have a few more minutes, and I'm wondering. We have 2 more minutes, but I'm wondering, does anyone have a question for another presenter? Yes, Lisa.
I was really intrigued with Theda's presentation about, specifically when you were talking about the course, the actual workshop, and that you were, I don't know if that's what you were going to have them do as much as that specific project where you found that collection of threads in the ocean and then transformed that. And I was really intrigued by the idea that there was this kind of random collection of found objects prior to you taking them and then transforming them into something else, versus I think when I think about finding objects, it's like one object and then I take that and I might connect it with something from another place, but that there was this kind of random connection of materials prior to you manipulating them. I'm just curious if that's always been part of your process, or if there was a moment where you were like, wow, look at this beautiful like lump of threads and I'm going to manipulate these into something new.
I am beachcombing on a regular basis. I'm hiking and seeing things all the time. And then there are people that send me packages of materials. So every time, going to get mail is either bills or something exciting coming in the mail that I don't know where it's coming from in the world. And it's usually something from someone that says, I've been holding on to this forever and haven't figured out how to use it. And when I open packages like that, I immediately have a bunch of ideas and start to work from that. Because those are like special because they came from somebody else's collection. But if you look in my studio, it's a series of clear plastic bins of things that have been sorted by color and texture, and they're labeled with who gave them to me or what was going on at the time. And so they're all memories that are there that when I want to talk about a specific memory, I can go in and delve into that memory and it's all there. But for the course, I'm going to invite people to look at the things that they've been hoarding, that they haven't been sure what they're going to do with, and we're going to figure out together what they're going to make with that.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. Well, it was wonderful talking to you all. I wish we had longer. So many things to share. So thank you so much, presenters, for sharing everything today, including Maggie, who shared through video. And I want to thank our sponsors and thank everyone who attended today and is listening or watching it back. The SDA's workshop series is open to members and non-members. There are 8 of them this spring. You can register for a 10% discount through December 15th using the code Textile Talk, all caps, no spaces, Textile Talk, before December 15th. And since the workshop series does take place over a few months, you can take several workshops all at a reduced rate, which is very doable. This Textile Talk recording will be available on YouTube in the next week. If you value this programming and that you're viewing, please consider making a donation to support this free program, which is available to all. There'll be no Textile Talk next Wednesday, which is November 27th, due to the holiday here in the States. Textile Talks will return on December 4th with cross-cultural student curation, which is hosted by the International Quilt Museum. Sounds fascinating. Thank you for attending today's event, and thank you to our presenters.
Thank you.